Deion Sanders in Colorado after five-star quarterback Julian Lewis, but there is a new program standing in their way.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sport stops sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We thank you guys for tuning in. Joining me today, Locked On's very own Brian Smith, our recruiting insider. Brian, thank you for hopping on and talking about Colorado because it's getting spicy in Boulder on a lot of fronts, and we're going to have some fun today.
I'm ready for it.
Let's do it. Okay, the biggest story on the docket right now in terms of on-the-field things, is Julian Lewis. He's a 4 or 5-star quarterback, mostly a 5-star quarterback, depending on where you get your recruiting information from. Georgia quarterback. His recruitment's been all over the place. He's committed to USC, but it honestly seems like maybe he just wanted to commit to USC for that really cool hype video. I don't know. Like the USC commitment for Julian Lewis has seemed very flimsy over the past few months. And so it was Auburn, it was Colorado, and then Indiana emerging as a dark horse. And now Tom Loy for 24/7 Sports kind of said, hey, it's Indiana's like race to lose at this point is kind of the vibe I got. So can you kind of talk to me about what the heck is going on in this recruitment and why Indiana? Like where do they come from, you know?
First off, Kurt Cignetti, the coach there, is a very good football coach.
Right.
Not a lot of people know him. He took the long route to make it to the major level, but he can coach. And I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to give a history lesson on him, but he knows offense, he knows quarterbacks, etc. And I forget who it is. There's somebody on his staff that has a connection with Lewis. And everything in recruiting is relationship built. So forget the Indiana thing. If I remember right, and I am an Indiana grad, by the way, so this is not a good thing, but I believe they have more losses than any program in the history of major college football. Not the stat you want to be number one with. So obviously when I first saw that, like, why is Julian look at it? It's the connection thing. And he can't coach. So there's that. Auburn, I cover Auburn, etc. It's the dad is the problem. It's not Lewis and why things keep going awry. I'm just going to cut to the chase. It's an NIL package that they want that's not realistic. Well, the dad wants. I don't know what Julian wants. I've never really had a conversation with the father. Maybe Indiana's willing to do it to get the exposure. Maybe Colorado is, but Georgia wasn't. Alabama wasn't. Auburn wasn't. So there's the thing. I'm curious how much Indiana would be offering. It's just never been a school to spend a ton on that, but they do have some humongous donors. Again, I went to school there.
It's usually in a different sport.
Yeah, I know, but like football, they at one point they had like the largest weight room in college, and they're terrible usually. Wow. So like, you know, they got some really good facilities. It's a neat campus, all that stuff. But they've never been good at football. So it is wild, but I know Tom Loy too. He's not going to throw that out there for funsies. Mm-hmm. Like somebody told him something. There's something going on. And at this point, you're probably not going to get Julian on the phone. Those days have passed. So
is that like anyone or just like Colorado? Do you think Colorado could get them on the phone if they wanted to?
Well, I mean, the coach as far as media.
Gotcha.
Yeah, like Deion, sure. Media, zero chance. That's pretty much where we're at. Maybe Chad Simmons, because like Chad lives right down the road from there. But still, even that's probably not going to be much. So it's going to be a lot of wild rumors from this point until he signs his letter of intent. Yeah,
and to go back to that connection, it is actually Tino Sunseri, the son of former Colorado defensive line coach Sal Sunseri. Sal is no longer.
What a small world.
Yeah, so really weird little connection there. But I did a little digging, and he knew Julian when he was like in 8th grade or something, and now he's the offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach for Indiana, and so he's kind of their shoe-in there. And realistically, when I look at this recruitment, I thought Auburn was like Colorado's biggest threat at one point. And then it kind of seems like everyone is pivoting except for Colorado. Like I think Colorado is all in, which could make this loss very difficult if they don't get him, because USC has kind of turned their attention to Texas A&M commit Hassan Longstreet. And then obviously Auburn has turned their attention to Notre Dame commit Deuce Knight, right? So everyone is, it's a really I guess we'll call it a 2.5 horse race because USC still has to be in the mix until
He's
publicly,
committed.
yeah, so until he backs off, they're in the race. But realistically, a program like Colorado, and like just talk about the quarterback recruits in general, how big of a loss would it be if they've had their eyes or their sights set on Julian Lewis and signing day rolls around and he puts pen to paper, whether it be Indiana or USC? Like, how big of a loss is that for Colorado?
Oh, I'll go this far. You've got Shador leaving for the National Football League after this season. Who's the backup?
Ryan Staub. Yeah. Started against Utah, lost to the Utah's JUCO starting quarterback who made his debut that day, walk on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you answered the question there.
Right.
You know, if they lose, I mean, they can get a portal guy, but you can't just do that over and over. You've got to build. And if they got Lewis, they'd have him for at least 3 years.
Right.
I mean, hypothetically, like I would imagine he'd do that because he's getting some NIL money to go out there, cool place to live, all that. It's huge. It may be even enough if this season doesn't go well that Deion's not there. Like he needs to have something to hold on to after his son leaves. Why would I stay if we're not going to be good? Like if they have a bad season with his kid, that's going to be a first-round pick, and we're not getting Julian, why am I here? So I think it'd be catastrophic.
Okay, so catastrophic if they don't get him. Let's flip the script a little bit. Let's say they have a solid season. They win 7-8 games, right?
Okay.
Shador's obviously a top 10-ish pick, top 5 pick. And then they do get Julian. What does that do for them recruiting-wise? Right. Because obviously recruits are kind of like NBA free agents. It's like you throw out an emoji and all of a sudden this dude from Florida is like, hey, you want to team up? Right? So talk to me about what the impact of getting him would be.
Part of that would be timing. If he announces publicly, I'm going to Colorado tomorrow, and he shuts it down, then it's massive. If he does it at the very end, it doesn't have very much impact.
Right. Okay.
Like, I'll give you an example. Auburn really wants Deuce Knight to flip yesterday because they can't get receivers right now. They got good receivers last year, but they don't have a quarterback in this class. So it's pretty darn difficult. You need them early. This is way late already. You want to have them in your class before June. It's August. Yeah. So that would be part of it. But even so, the next class you'd get more of the boom, and you'd probably get a portal kid that you may not have even had come to campus if Julius stepped on campus. Because I'm telling you, I've seen him throw several times. There's a reason people want to play with him. He's extremely accurate.
Yeah, and the transfer portal thing is a little weird because you look around the country, and obviously there's always a random portal guy. Like it's hard to predict who's going to be in the portal. But most of the guys that the foreseeable portal entries are probably going to be backups or someone who's trying to make the jump from group of 5 to the power of 4. Like I look at Ohio State's quarterback room, someone's going to leave. I don't know who it's going to be. Someone's going to leave, but then you're getting someone who hasn't played. And so I think obviously you'd probably want the long-term investment in Julian Lewis over someone who's kind of, I want to say, like it just hasn't worked out for them yet, right? So Julian Lewis is kind of chips all in, and you got to do what you got to do. And I remember we talked about this, I think the last time you were on the show was about a month or so ago. And I think I went through the list. It was around the Elite 11 time. And every top quarterback was committed except for Jaron, I forgot his last. So I'm not going to try to say his last name. The top kid in Hawaii. And he was the only one that wasn't committed. And then obviously he's committed now. So there's not many options out there, if any. So for Colorado, it is Julian Lewis or bust, or you're going to have to hope that you could get a ready-made quarterback in the portal, which those guys usually want to go to teams that are, how do we say it nice, contending for things, right? So Julian Lewis, a lot of potential for Colorado, right?
100%. He creates a swell that you're not going to get with just any player. He's a quarterback. He's been well known since he was in junior high, literally. And he's a guy playing at Carrollton High School, one of the best programs in the state of Georgia. It's all good for Colorado if they get it. Yeah,
that'd be a huge get for Colorado. Obviously, major question is if, and they got to duke out Indiana. Who knew one of the biggest recruiting battles would be Colorado and Indiana, and USC's in third place, just sitting there like. So, what a world college football is these days, and NIL was supposedly going to make it unbalanced. I guess it's not. So, when we come back, we're going to be getting Brian's perspective on all of the noise around Coach Prime, Colorado, and all the fun that's been happening. But first, a word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much, and I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sporting like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel and start making the most out of your summer. Go check out Paul Skeens. I feel like he's striking everyone out. That's probably a safe bet. Shohei Ohtani, a home run here or there. Aaron Judge, same thing. Go check him out. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. Joining me today, Brian Smith, our recruiting insider over at the Locked On Podcast Network and Locked On Buffs, of course. Brian, Colorado in the news lately. I'll give you like the skinny of like what's been happening. So 2 weeks ago-ish, it's SEC Media Days, and Paul Feinbaum says Deion Sanders should replace Lincoln Riley at USC. And I was like, whoa, like that was out of the blue, right? And he's like, Deion Sanders would be able to channel that energy in Los Angeles. He'd have USC as popular as ever, which is probably true. You know, I would imagine that his popularity alone could get them to Pete Carroll level popularities without winning games. Then we kind of flip the script, and Paul Feinbaum's like, actually, he shouldn't be the head coach at any major program or USC. He says that too. And it's like, okay, that was a little weird. He said Colorado's not relevant. It's all Deion Sanders. And then Deion Sanders has sort of this run-in with the media, which I talked about it yesterday. As people who work in the media, Brian, we know that if or when we do work, sometimes coaches or players are not well receptive to that work. That doesn't mean they have to answer us, but it also doesn't mean that they're not going to get backlash for how they respond to the media's questions. So what is your pulse of all of this going on in Colorado? Would you consider this a distraction, or do you think Colorado will be A-okay?
It can be for an individual here or there, maybe some of the younger players.
Okay.
But I mean, these guys have a routine. They're getting up at like 6 a.m. to go lift, go to class, etc. I highly doubt they're paying attention to what Deion's doing. And they probably know, because he is a very unique personality, that program's not going to be run like any other in college football either. They do that walking in the door. If they didn't, what are you doing there? So I don't think it's a huge distraction to players. Now, the fans, there'll be all kinds of scuttlebutt amongst the Colorado fans. I'm sure you've met and or communicated with some of them. But I just think it's more distraction with Deion, because he has thin skin. That's not a newsflash, but most coaches do. Right. So he took it out on the CBS guy or whatever. I don't think that's going to impact their season very much. I really don't.
Yeah, and I think, and you could attest to this, you could tell me if you disagree with this or not, but I think every coach in college football sort of has that one beat reporter where, whether or not they answer questions for them, that's a different story, obviously. But every coach has that one reporter when you hear Bob Smith, whatever outlet, and the coach is like every coach has that one reporter, right? Like, I don't think this is like exclusive to Deion. It's just a little more public because it's Deion. Would you agree with that?
It's true. To give you an example, Coach Mallory, who ended up at Indiana, ironically, so we're talking about Colorado and Indiana, was at Colorado in the 80s. There was a local beat writer that hated his guts and vice versa. I mean, and it partially caused him to get fired at Colorado. Like, it was that toxic. He went to Indiana and he told the SID, no matter who it is, if it doesn't go right, we got to fix it, because I'm not going through that again. So it just depends on the coach. Like Saban, he's had his moments, and other coaches. I'm sure you saw the clip with a certain head coach at Ole Miss taking shots at Feinbaum while they were sitting at the counter the other day.
That was so awkward. That was like about as awkward as it could have been.
Lane Kiffin does not care, but he's an awkward guy. He's very intelligent, but he's just not able to normal settings. So everybody has something. It's how you cope and deal with it. Even Saban, 99% of the time, got through it. But if you can't do that, are you really willing to go through everything you got to for your team and earn that $7 to $10 million? You know what I mean? It's just a question. So I think more coaches find ways around it, and they give baloney answers. But yeah, I know coaches from talking to some guys behind the scenes. There are people they don't like, etc. They just try to go around stuff and get out of the press conference fast as they can.
Yeah, and I think if there was one thing that Deion Sanders, I guess, possibly could do different, but he doesn't have to. And I think that's the thing that people forget when it comes to the media. And I've learned this a few times. And I had one of my professors in college. He was a beat reporter for the White Sox back in the day. And he said that the manager absolutely hated him. And so every time he would ask him a question, the manager would just go yes or no. Like whatever the question was, he'd just be like, yes, no. And so Deion Sanders doesn't have to do that. But the lesson that my professor taught us was you do your job how you feel you need to do it. But just know that doesn't mean it's going to give you what the results you want. And so I think that's kind of like the big teaching point or learning experience that I've had, because at the end of the day, until Rick George, the AD, says, hey, you can't do that, Deion Sanders is going to do whatever he wants. This is his program. It's the same thing with whoever's coaching at Alabama, Fresno State, doesn't matter, Boise State, BYU. If the coach chooses not to talk to someone, or maybe they give Brian better answers than they give me, that's just their prerogative. Like, I think that's the thing that college football fans aren't realizing is kind of like, hey, just because you're asked a question doesn't mean you have to answer it. And so if you were to sort of give advice to a college football fan who's really obsessed with Deion Sanders and his, I guess, approach to the media, what would it be?
Expect the unexpected. There will be days where he answers everything, and there will be days where Deion is not so happy. I've had the chance to talk to him a couple times in passing when he used to work with Under Armour at the camps and stuff. In general, he's a nice guy. But when you are involving the people he's responsible for, or somebody's family, or one of the administrators, Colorado football, you say negative things. Again, he's a pretty thin-skinned guy that's used to ultra success. He's not going to take it well. Don't act surprised when he says or does something that most people wouldn't. He's got a life that you can't even explain. So it's different for him.
You know, the joke, or it's not really a joke, but the moment last year where he said we keep receipts. Do you remember that? They legitimately keep receipts, because I remember after the first or second game they won, the Deion Sanders Jr. was posting articles of just like people who were bashing Colorado, and one of them was mine. I wasn't bashing them. I had written about, I think it was like someone's comments about their transfer portal usage, but they legitimately keep receipts. So if you guys don't think that media and fan attention doesn't get to coaches, you're sadly mistaken. You're sadly mistaken.
Oh, yes, it does.
But you're also mistaken if you think that if they owe us an answer for everything. So I think that's kind of like the fine line that the media has to dance, and sort of, I think with Deion Sanders is probably a little more difficult of a dance than other coaches. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the overall recruiting vibe from Colorado. What do they need to do to sort of get more recruits, and what could hurt the recruiting efforts in 2024? But first, a word from our sponsors over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. Over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Okay, Brian, let's dive back into your area of expertise, recruiting. It's fun. It's hard to explain. It's hard to understand sometimes. It's always the wild, wild west in recruiting. And so when it comes to Colorado, where it's already the wild, wild west based on how they like to do things, I wanted to get your perspective on just the energy you're getting from recruits when it comes to Colorado. Are they as interested in Colorado, less interested in Colorado? Are they telling you what they're looking for? Like, what is the overall vibe on Colorado? And then after that, we'll get to what they can do to either A, improve it, or B, sustain it.
I haven't spoken to as many kids at this point this year that I did last year talking about Colorado, but I'm in the South, so it's going to be random anyway. But I think a lot of kids are in the wait and see mode from the handful of conversations that I've had, meaning they need to win. And I don't think that's any secret. They can't go out and win 4 games, 5 games. But if I remember right, the over-under is like 5.5 on most of the sports books, somewhere around there. So they need to exceed expectations, and they need to, throw it around, which they got Shador. I think that part they're good. Now the question is, can they really go out and beat some of these teams? Their schedule is not easy. It's the Big 12, but they play some tough games on the road. They got Colorado State on the road. I just think otherwise they got to recruit just hard. There is no magic elixir with football recruiting. It's effort. It's relationship building. So we'll see what Deion and his staff do, but they need to come out of the gate hot and heavy. That's the first thing.
Okay, I agree with that, because I think the hard part with recruiting at a program like Colorado when you're Deion Sanders is the initial buzz was palpable. Like, he had people committing to Colorado that had never visited. They were just committing simply because he was the coach.
Right.
And now, obviously, he has time to get them on campus and stuff like that. And so he doesn't do the at-home visits, which I thought was an interesting strategy. But in his eyes, he visits one player at home, it'll ruin relationships otherwise. And, I don't know if we've ever had a coach as famous in college football in the way that he's famous. Obviously, Nick Saban is as famous as it gets at this level. So if that's how he feels, or if that's the reception he's gotten, then I guess we just have to watch him not do at-home visits. But you look at their class right now, Brian, and I'll update you on their rankings. 82nd in the country, according to 24/7. They have 2 4-stars and then a handful of 3-stars. If Colorado wins, say, 8 games, what do you think that does for the class? Like, is this a top 25 class? Is this a maybe top 35-ish class? What do you think that would do for them?
I don't think they're going to go for numbers, so I don't even know if they'd still finish in the top 50, because some of these services just go by point totals. Okay. Each player is an accumulation because they get X number of points. It's more about quality. They might add a few more high school kids than they would have otherwise. That's also important. And B, I think the quality would go up, but I wouldn't worry about the ranking. They do it differently because where they're at, there's not many great players in the state of Colorado to recruit. So they're going to have to go out and scour the country. It is what it is. Texas, California, Arizona, whatever it may be. I think they would end up with a couple more guys. Again, recruits want to see it. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to read about it. They don't want to listen to this podcast to hear about it. They want to see Colorado win a football game against a quality opponent and then do it again. And then do it again.
That's the only recipe for success is winning, huh? There's no pitch, no NIL thing. It's just winning.
Because, everybody has NIL now.
Right.
Why would I take NIL with a program that's 4-8 when I go to one that's 10-2?
Right.
That's how recruits look at it. I'm just being real.
I like that perspective, because honestly, if you're a recruit, and I would love to hear your sort of elaborate on that perspective a little bit. If you're a recruit and it's a flashy program like Colorado, you have Deion Sanders, you have all the social media attention, you have the record-breaking viewers every week, but they're not winning games. As a recruit, what is the benefit of the doubt timeline, if you know what I mean?
That's a great question. It's probably the most pertinent one. Let me give you 2 sides of the pendulum here. If they start 0-3 and look bad in a couple of those games, could be lights out. But it's just the opposite, 3-0, because he's a lightning rod.
Right.
He doesn't have middle ground. His press conferences are going to go one of 2 ways. And we'll see how it is. Deion doesn't take losing very well. I think he actually has a hard time relating with some of the kids. Why aren't you as hard a worker as I was? Because he was a film nut and all that kind of stuff. So I think the energy from him, if they lose, will be bad. That'll kill recruiting. And then it'll be great if they win.
Okay.
Literally, this is about wins and losses.
Okay.
So
simple as that.
Because of his personality, it'll take on a life of its own.
So realistically, I look at Colorado's schedule, and I think their best case scenario to start the year, because it goes North Dakota State, at Nebraska, at Colorado State, then they have Baylor at home, and then they go to Orlando. Those are the first 5 games. Those are tough games, but let's just say perfect scenario, they go 5-0. Recruiting, you think it's popping off after 5 straight wins for Colorado? Probably jumping in the rankings?
I would imagine so. It'd be how could they not?
Right.
Would be my first, look at it from both sides again. If you're 5-0 and exceeding expectations and Deion's your head coach, it's on the coaches at that point just to do their job.
Okay.
And finalize the deal. You should absolutely add some players. If you didn't, I'd be very puzzled.
Yeah. So basically, as we wrap the show up, the consensus is just, as Al Davis said, just win, baby, win. Because that's what it comes down to. That's what it comes down to for Colorado, I think. And I think people want to see him win games, and I think people want to have his assurance that he's going to remain in Boulder. And so only way to do those things is to win some games and get him to want to stay in Boulder this upcoming year. So Brian, I appreciate you for hopping on today and sort of giving us that recruit insider perspective and just perspective from recruits, because it's a weird world that you lead over there in South Florida.
Yeah, it's part of the world, man. Recruiting is everything down here in the South. So
Yeah, for sure. Tell the people where they can find you and what you're working on, so that way they can keep up with all your work and recruiting insight as well.
On X at FB_Scout_Florida. I actually live in Alabama now. I cover Auburn too, cover Miami, cover Florida State, cover basically everything down here. And yes, sometimes Colorado as well.
There you go. Brian's doing it all. I'm doing it all over here on Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Hope to see all you guys tomorrow. Have a great day. And this has been Locked On Buffs.